Okay. I want to go over the reading section, and it's completely different than the other tests, the other two math tests and the writing test, because it's almost entirely self-contained. You're not going to be bringing outside knowledge except the ability to read and some vocabulary to the reading test. You don't need to memorize things. You don't need to walk in with the equations or the rules for commas. And you have to be careful, because a lot of times the information you walk in can actually hurt you. Let me give you some examples. So I did a passage once about the Revolutionary War, and one of the characters was scared that he was going to lose and not see his family and die. Okay, so one of the questions was asking about how he felt, and one of the answers was he didn't need to worry because, as we know, the Americans won the Revolutionary War. And that was incorrect, because that's not what was being asked. You had to answer he was afraid he was going to lose. They like to do this. Remember, the SAT is gonna SAT. They're going to write these questions, and then they're going to try to trick you into guessing a wrong answer. Okay? Always keep that in mind. This is not any in this way. This test isn't different than the math and the writing test. They're going to try to trick you. Another time I read a passage, and I think this is SAT 3. So if you've been going through the course, you've probably already taken this one. And I don't think it gives too much away, but sorry if it does. It's a paired passage, and it has Lincoln and I believe it was Thoreau. You know, and Lincoln, we think of him as the American abolitionist. He's the American Moses. And Thoreau, we think of him as, you know, the guy who broke all the laws, you know, the unjust laws, right? You know, he's the guy who famously, like, you know, his friends, what are you doing in jail? And he's like, oh, what are you doing not in jail? The laws are unjust. Was that Thoreau? Yeah. Yeah, that's right, Thoreau. I went to go check just to make sure I had that right. You know, he was the one who argued if there's laws that are unjust, we should break them, famously. So the SAT knows that a lot of you have walked in to the SAT with these ideas of these men in your mind. Well, the paired passage that you will see, hopefully, you know, is going to talk about how they relate to laws and following laws. So there's a question that says, how did these men relate to the abolitionist movement? Well, if you didn't read the passage and we're just trying to like move forward, you would say both of them agreed with the abolitionist movement. The thing is in Lincoln's speech, he actually admonishes the abolitionists to stay within the law. And Henry David Thoreau admonishes the abolitionists to think carefully about which laws they're going to break in their activism or something like that. Okay, the thing is neither men in these speeches they gave, which you read on the SAT, identify with the abolitionist movement. They aren't criticizing them for being wrong. They're criticizing them for going about things the wrong way. And that's a weird energy coming from our perspective today. The SAT loves that stuff, absolutely loves it. Okay, there's another be careful of, like, I get the sense they're going to want to bait something that we would call political correctness. So, for example, there's a passage with Virginia Woolf, a very famous feminist. And in the passage, she's looking at people crossing the river Thames. I'm worried I'm saying that wrong. Let me check if I'm saying that right. Thames, the river Thames. Okay, so she's watching these people go through it. Okay, and I don't want to get too much into the article because you're going to go through it as you take the practice SAT test. But there's a question where they ask how she relates to the something about her relating to the bridge over the River Thames. Okay. And one of the answers is she sees the bridge as a symbol of the patriarchy. Now, that sounds like it might be true. And it also sounds like it might be a straw feminist reduction. Okay, I found my very liberal students to fall victim to this, and my very conservative students to fall victim to this. I had a conservative student who would say things like, well, of course she does, she's a feminist. And so of course that's what you would do. This is the SAT, liberalism, blah, 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 blah. And he would get those wrong, just like someone else be like, well, of course it's a symbol of the patriarchy. And the answer is, it's where she went to people watch. She had plenty to say, okay? But do you see how that's like a bait? Is that a gotcha? You got to remember that. And I don't want you to look at the SAT as having some sort of political bias. Maybe it does, but I want you to look at it as it's biased to making sure you get things wrong that you shouldn't get wrong. Okay, so they're going to use that one way or another. You're going to be reading a lot of stuff about sexism, about racism, about colonialism, okay, about the American, they call it the American like experiment or something, or the American conversation. The SAT calls it the American conversation. What that basically means to me is it's going to be in English. That's really what it means. And on their website, they say you might see something from South Africa or something like that. It's been my experience that you've only seen stuff from America or England. I could be wrong, you know, I'm just telling you what my experience has been. And there's always going to be a paired passage, all right? And the paired passage is almost always going to be something somewhat controversial. So just keep that in mind, okay? They love to talk about women's suffrage. They love to talk about carbon emissions. They love to talk about the future of space, GMOs. And for some reason, a lot of civil engineering. There's a lot of discussion about maps and traffic. Okay, these themes come up a lot, all right? You don't necessarily need to know a lot about them to get through it. You don't need to walk in for information. I'm just telling you the kind of themes that I see a lot of, okay? The thing is, I don't want you to care. Sometimes you're going to read really beautiful passages, okay? And sometimes you're going to be really bored, okay? I don't want you to get invested either way, okay? I find that when a student gets invested either way, they tend to, their score drops, okay? The thing is, the SAT is very pedantic and particular, okay? And a lot of times when I read the SAT questions they're kind of digging in on, it kind of seems like they may have just somehow missed the point, or they're focusing on a smaller point to see if you can catch other details. That's probably more likely what it is, but it does seem like they missed the point. And they also kind of narrow in on the effect of things, how something might, like how it might have been crafted to bring about a certain thing. So you have to think of it kind of, you're not going to be asked your opinion on what you read at all, okay? So your opinion on what you read doesn't matter at all. So, I mean, when we think about what empathy is the ability to understand or care about someone else's perspective. And reading is entirely empathetic because you're having someone else's words go through your brain. But I would take that, yes, that's true. Unfortunately, I can't teach you empathy right now. Hopefully that's something you practice. But the thing is, on the SAT, you actually more need to empathize with the questions, not the content itself. It's frustrating because that's what you really actually need to understand. So much so that a lot of times you don't even have to read the passage. I'm going to give you some examples. Okay, so I'm going to take an example from SAT 1. Let me just pull it up here first before I share my screen. About how this works and how you can oftentimes get around not reading the whole passage. Okay. Now you guys should have already read this one. So here we go. Okay. So the first thing I do is I read this part right here. Okay. This passage is from Lydia Minatoya, The Strangeness of Beauty, 1999 by Lydia Minatoya. The setting is Japan in 1920. Chie and her daughter Naomi are members of the House of Fuji, a noble family. I like to read this because it gives me an idea of what kind of language and maybe a little bit of the themes. It was written in 1999, so I shouldn't have too much problem, but it is retrospectively about a family in 1920. I also look to see if there's something at the end. Not always, but here we have this. You know, sometimes you'll have a graph. Here's another graph. That one didn't have it. Okay. I find even if it's something like this, this is actually probably kind of a major plot point. So I just read it, okay? This is referencing something. See if I can find it. Yoshi. A man who marries a woman of higher status and takes her family name. Okay. They're using that word for some reason, okay? No, I'm not going to read the passage. I'm going to go straight to the question. What choice best describes what happens in the passage? I can't answer this one, not yet, okay? Sometimes I have to read, but I can't answer this, okay? What choice best describes the developmental pattern of the passage, okay? What happens, the developmental pattern. These are a little bit different, okay? Here's the thing. With these kind of questions, you don't actually have to figure it out. You just have to, it's there. The answer is there. You just have to figure out which one of the four given is the answer. That's actually a different cognitive process and one that takes less time and less work on your part, okay? As used in line 1 and line 65, directly most nearly means. Now, here's the thing with the vocab words. These are all synonyms for directly. This is almost always the case, okay? And this is a vocabulary in context. So you're going to choose one of them that can work. Ignore the periods right here, because that just means this sentence right here. But any of these can be replaced, like can replace directly. So you can actually go over here and kind of go like this. And see what works. This gets around the cognitive dissonance. I mean, the confirmation bias we have when we're dealing with what is already given. Just fill in the blank, okay? Akira came blank, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he followed form? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between? Would Chie have been more receptive? All right. Okay, so let's try these. Akira came frankly, breaking all traditions. Frankly means without pretty words. I don't know if that's it. Confidently, that he does seem confident. Well, he doesn't. Was that it? He's insecure. He's like, I don't know, maybe however I came breaking all tradition was maybe not the right decision. Without mediation. Okay. Was that it? Had he followed form? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between? A go-between is a mediator. Would she have been more receptive? Let's try it again. Akira came without mediation, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he followed form? Had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between? Would she have been more receptive? Yeah, because it literally says, had he done something different than what he had actually done, which was that different thing is to speak to his father to approach a go-between without mediation. There we go. And the thing is this, I mean, I've done this passage before. This is a major plot point. Okay? So they're filling you in by caring about the questions. You're getting the plot now. You may not seem like it when you're reading the thing. I'm telling you 2020 hindsight, this is a major plot point. Okay? They tend to do that with these questions. They focus on the plot points. What reaction does Akira most fear from Chie? We don't know this. What choice provides the best evidence to answer the previous question? Aha. Okay, so this is called a evidence-based pair. You see how 5 relates to 4? Okay.
Yeah.
These are kind of give-me's, all right? These are like twofers, okay? Buy one, get one free, all right? The amount of work you spend on this is about the same amount of work you spend for any question, except you get 2 answers. Here's what's frustrating about these questions, okay? A lot of people, so I'm giving you my strategy, but I'm going to share with you some other strategies that you can use. All of the strategies I've ever seen towards the SAT reading section uses the paired evidence-based pair, okay? In some way or another. I use it to tell you major plot points and to make this faster and more accurate. Other people use very similar, but sometimes they go about it slightly different ways. It typically is 40% of each passage. Each passage is 10 questions, and about 2 of them, here's another pair, are, we got 2 pairs. So let's look at this one. Here it is again. Here it is again. Okay. Unfortunately, there was, and I remember the PSAT is the same as the SAT, essentially speaking, and the PSAT does the same thing. One of the more recent PSATs only had 20% of these. So everyone was just like, everyone who like really prepped, like the next day, SAT and PSAT Reddit was so upset that there was only 20% evidence-based pairs. That's how valuable these are to you getting a high score. So don't underestimate them. It may be that you're only going to get about 20% of them, but it's typically been about 40% of the questions are these evidence-based pairs. Okay. Now here's the thing. I want you to look at these as kind of highlights. Imagine someone had gone through this passage and highlighted them. Even if they're the wrong answers, they're almost always pertaining to something important. All right. So line 33, his voice refined. We're looking for fear. We don't know the answer, but we just know that one of these is evidence of fear. We don't know if fear of what, we don't know, but evidence of fear is what we're looking for. Okay. His voice refined. So okay, so it starts with his voice and ends with refined, line 33. And I will use brackets to indicate that I've read something, like brackets or something like that. Okay. His voice was soft, refined. I'm going to just finish the whole paragraph because why not? He straightened and stole a deferential peek at her face. I don't see fear here, at least in this part right here. There's no fear. Okay. 49 through 51 starts with you, ends with mind. You know how children speak so earnestly, so hurriedly, so endearingly about things that have no importance in an adult's mind? I didn't hear any fear there. Please and proposal, 63 through 64. Please don't judge my candidacy by the unseemliness of this proposal. Now, there's no direct mention of the word fear here, but he is afraid of judgment. That's why he's asking her not to judge him. Don't judge me. Why? Because of my unseemliness of his proposal. No, we know why his proposal was unseemly. He skipped mediation. Two for one. Let's go ahead and finish because these are all like plot points. Okay, so 71 to 72. Eager to make his point, to be looking her full in the face. There's no fear there. There's no fear there. He's confident, right? Okay. So here, it's very clear now. You see how I got 2 for 1? My score goes up.
Yeah.
In the passage, Akira addresses Chie with affection but not genuine love, objectivity but not complete impartiality, amusement but not mocking disparagement, respect but not utter deference. You may not be able to answer this one right now, but let's try to rule some out. I don't know about genuine love. I think he just met her. I know he just met her. I don't want to give the plot point away, but he is asking for someone, her daughter's hand in marriage. Objectivity but not complete impartiality, that sounds pretty good. Amusement but not mocking disparagement. I don't think he sounds very respectful. Respect but not utter deference. Well, here's the thing, I already know this. I can tell he's respectful, but he looked her square in the face. Full in the face. See, I got that plot point from this guy, and I'm glad I read it, because even though I already knew this was the answer, this was a plot point. This happens a lot. Okay. The main purpose of the first paragraph is, okay, so go ahead to the first paragraph. I've already read it. Akira came without mediation, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Had he followed form, had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between, would Chie have been more receptive? We can infer from here that Chie is not very receptive. The main purpose of this paragraph is to describe a culture. This feels like it could be right, but that's only because if Japanese is not your culture. Okay, and that's I'm not criticizing anyone or anything like that, but that is the thing that sometimes we do when something is different from what we expect. Okay, they're like, oh, you're describing your culture. Actually, I'm just kind of telling you about an experience that wouldn't be that different if you were Japanese. Okay, I don't see any description of any culture here. There's not like the Japanese culture or blah blah blah. No, that's not it. But you can see how that feels right. Criticize the tradition. It feels this could be it also, but there is no criticism. So the tradition is form, right? To get a mediator. Is there any criticism of it?
No.
But do you see how this has the energy of being right? They love to do that. Question the suggestion. Was there a suggestion here? I don't see a suggestion. Analyze the reaction. Was that it? Akira came without mediation, breaking all tradition. Was that it? Isn't receptive a reaction? Being more receptive, isn't that a reaction? The thing is, when I think about this question, I don't feel like D feels right, but it is right. Gross, right? Okay. As used in line 2, form most nearly means, no, we've looked at this word several times. It means custom. Let's go back. Had he followed form? Look how both of the vocabulary words are narrowed into this plot point that he skipped a go-between. Do you see how they've really narrowed in on that? And we're almost done and we haven't read it. I'll be honest, this is one of the best writings I've ever seen on the SAT. It is beautiful. Lydia Montoya is an amazing writer. And this is one of them you can skip a lot of. Okay, because of the way the questions narrow in on the plot points. Why does Akira say his meeting with Chie is a matter of urgency? Line 32. Okay, we're not going to read these. We're going to go straight to here because we have a paired passage, a paired evidence-based pair, not paired passage, an evidence-based pair. What choice provides the best evidence to answer the previous question? Line 39. I don't want to trouble you. Okay, where does it start? Don't want to trouble you. Okay, that's it. I don't want to trouble you. No. Matter of urgency. I don't see any urgency. He's saying I don't want to trouble you, but you got to see urgency here. Normally, community. 30. So the very next line. Normally, I would approach you more properly, but I received word of a position. I have an opportunity to go to America as a dentist for Seattle's Japanese community. Is that a reason for a sense of urgency?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so then we're going to go back over here. There it is. Okay, let's go ahead and read these two, 58 through 59. Depending on your response, I may stay in Japan. I've come to ask for Naomi's hand. Boom, huge plot point, right? I mean, we kind of figured that was going to happen, but there it is. 72 to 73. I see I've startled you. I see I've startled you. There's the reaction. She was startled. Okay, so that's it. He's analyzing that reaction right there. Okay, so now let's go back to what point choice describes what happens in the passage. Here's the thing. We actually haven't finished the passage. So at this point, you're on time. I know it's a beautiful passage, but you probably just want to just bump down to the bottom to get it done. Where did you meet such a fellow? Imagine he thinks he can marry the Fuji heir and take her to America, all in the snap of his fingers. Chie waited for Naomi's ripe laughter. Naomi was silent. She stood a full half minute looking straight into Chie's eyes. Finally, she spoke. I met him at my literary meeting. Naomi turned to go back into the house and stopped. Mother, yes, I mean to have him. It like gives me chills. It's so well written. And there's parts in here that is just, like, let me show you. Reluctant to go to the guest, perhaps she was feeling too cozy. She had Naomi reading at the low table set atop a charcoal brazier, a thick quilt spread over the sides of the legs of the table so they were tucked inside with the heat. Like, it just described the blanket, the source of warmth, how she was feeling about wanting to stay snuggled in. The way they just, it's just so beautifully written. Okay. One character argues with another character who intrudes on her home. I didn't hear any arguments. I guess we can pop over here. We know he's leaving here. It's all him talking, so I don't see an argument here. My address is in the card. Don't just contact me every per 2 weeks time. Until then, good night. There's no argument. One character received a surprising request from another character. Because sometimes the right answer is so basically right. It's like there are two people in this chapter, and if that's true, you have to pick it. Sometimes the right answer, you just have to kind of test it with where's the lie? It's B. Like, it's just so obviously, like it's so obvious, right? A proposal that without mediation, when mediation is a custom, is certainly going to be a surprise, isn't it? But it's so it's like understated, right? Okay, yeah. And Superman was a fellow, it's just okay. They do that too. It happens a lot. One character reminisces about choices she made over the years. No, we saw that. There's no reminiscence. It's talking as if it's occurring, unfolding in real time. One character criticized another character for pursuing an unexpected course of action. I saw no criticism. The reaction was just a look of surprise. I guess she criticizes him down here, but she criticizes him to Naomi by calling him such a fellow. What a criticism, right? What choice best describes the developmental pattern of the passage? A careful analysis of a traditional practice. Okay, again, this may feel right because you think this might be a traditional analysis of mediated or like kind of like arranged or quasi-arranged marriages. It wasn't. It was just a story. Okay, a detailed depiction of a meaningful encounter. Is it detailed? Is it a meaningful
Very
encounter?
detailed. Yeah.
Okay, where's the lie? A definitive response to a series of questions, a cheerful recounting. This is not cheerful. Meaningful, but not cheerful. And that's how you got through it. And we didn't read it. It's beautiful. Okay, it's a really great write. But you are under a time constraint and you are trying to go to college and get as high as the highest points as you can. Okay, and this is how you do it. This cuts through. This one didn't really have it, but the others they have techno babble.
So basically, reading it could potentially hurt you, like the whole
Yes,
thing.
potentially hurt you. Okay, I don't like a lot of blocks, but this one is amazing. Reading. Posted by Alan Chang. Okay, so I like what he says. I read a lot of his other blogs. He is a student, not a tutor. So he got an 800. Okay, so he's coming from a valedictorian sort of mentality. I know you've heard my timing strategies. His timing strategy is completely different. It doesn't give any leeway for going over time. And I get that from his point of view. He probably doesn't have timing strategies and he's just trying to offer advice to other people who do. So keep it with a grain of salt, okay? My strategy for improving your time and getting faster, I would like you to default to this one, but if you don't have timing strategies, yeah, do what he said, that's fine, okay? And he goes through about how it ranks and all this stuff, and he goes through some of how they reviewed the questions. He doesn't go into the history of the SAT so much, but they used to actually like test questions on students, and the white students would like whatever the white students tend to get right, they would include, and if the white students tend to get the wrong, they would exclude them, and the same with the black students. Okay, so SAT has that history, and because of that, they're extremely exacting. So they actually extensively review every question, which is sometimes why it does feel like the questions are kind of missing the point. They probably were, sometimes they had to kind of be pedantic just to, that's probably where the answer came from, like a meaningful encounter. Like, well, we got to figure out something, right? There are always going to be 3 wrong answers, and there's only going to be 1 right answer. Okay, and he's figured that out. Maybe not from like the historical perspective that I'm giving you, but he has definitely figured that out. See, learn to eliminate 3 wrong answers. Okay, and let's see, what does he say? He says it a really good way. Where does he say this? Oh yeah. Every single reading passage question has only 1 single correct answer, but the SAT disguises this fact. It asks questions like the author would most likely agree. No, the author would agree. The first paragraph primarily serves. No, the first paragraph serves. Okay. In line 20, dark most nearly means. No, dark means. Okay, look at it that way. Don't let those words make you think that there's more than 1 right answer, or that you have an opinion. You do not have an opinion. Your opinion is not here. If you're one of the people who are still writing the essay, then you get your opinion. But on this, no opinion. Okay. He talks about different reading strategies. Okay, actually, I want to go over this first. He has his own way of describing spicy. I describe spicy my way. He has his own way of describing it, and I really like it. Okay. For example, let's imagine you just read a passage talking about how human evolution shaped the environment. It gives a few examples. First, it talks about how the transition from earlier species like Homo habilis to Neanderthals led to more tool uses like fire, which caused wildfires and shaped the ecology. And then talks about Homo sapiens and their overhunting of species like woolly mammoths to extinction. All right, let's say you get a question like, which of the following best describes the main subject of the passage? Let's look at these answers and try to figure out why they're wrong, okay? The transition between Homo habilis and Neanderthals. That wasn't the point. Okay, the point was, here are 2 examples of Homo sapiens and what they did. Okay, so too specific. Actually, that's not how I would describe it, but Sure. Okay. The study of evolution. No. Yeah, I guess Homo habilis did evolve into Homo sapiens, but again, it's our human, I should say, humans' effect on the ecology. Okay. How the environment shaped human evolution. Now, this is the one I would probably get wrong. And I've asked you guys to write down, those 4 questions I want you to go through, right? What's the right answer? Why did I get it wrong? What type of question is this, and what can I do in the future to get this type of question right? Those 4 questions. So when I get things wrong, it's oftentimes because of this. I jig when I suggest. Okay. For some reason in my brain, it's very easy for me to mix these guys up. So how the environment shaped human evolution sounds and feels to me like how human evolution shaped the environment, but they're not the same thing. Okay. And they like to do that, especially on things with graphs and charts. If the graph's showing like trust in the media going up over time, and the question is, what is distrust doing over time? I might say going up, but if trust is going up, then distrust is going down. The inverse relationship, very spicy. Okay. The plausibility of evolution. No, okay, that again, that's like the political correctness, because some people might think a discussion about evolution is political, and so then they're kind of tapping into that energy by liking any discussion about evolution at all, even if it's just part of what you're talking about, must therefore be a discussion about the plausibility of evolution. That's not true. But do you see how they're baiting you? And this isn't necessarily going to bait people who don't believe in evolution and people who do believe in evolution. It's going to bait both of them if they look at it from a political viewpoint, just like the bridge over the river Thames. They're going to look at it that way. Okay, so don't get caught up in that. The passages themselves were probably not going to be political, but the questions can bait you if you are. Okay. The influence of human development on ecology is the right answer. And so he goes into pretty good detail about how they are tricky, how they're spicy. Okay. I don't necessarily like this guy where you predict the answer before you read the answer choices. Remember where I was saying you don't actually have to figure out the answer because one of those is the answer. You just have to recognize which one it is. Now, sometimes I do this, but just think about that, okay? Because what if you predict the answer and you go down there and it's not there at all? And then you're dealing with doubt. Sometimes read all 4. You don't want to be dealing with confirmation bias, right? Where you read one and you think that's it. But, this is fine as a strategy, but I don't use it that often. Experiment with passages, read strategies, and find the best one for you. Okay, I skim the passages and read the questions. This is probably what most people have done at the beginning, where you just read it and then answer the questions. Read the questions first and mark the passage. That is what I do. Okay. This is the second most common strategy, and if used well, as effective as the first method and faster. I think it's more effective, but it has some pitfalls if you don't do it correctly. Yes, I don't teach this strategy to someone who's taken the SAT in a day or 2. You do have to practice it. You have to practice reading the questions first. Here's how it goes. Before you read the passage, go to the questions and read each one. If the question refers to a series of lines, mark those lines in the passage, take a brief note. Well, I actually do a little bit more. I actually have you answer the questions. Go to the passage and skim it when you reach one of your notes. This is similar. This is similar to my strategy, okay? And look, but his markings are pretty much the same as mine. I maybe marked a little bit more than he did. But I think this is the strategy he ends up using. But he does say, in the hands of an SAT expert, and you guys, when you're done, this is a powerful strategy. It's extremely powerful. Okay, I've gotten students to get perfect scores from doing this strategy who are missing most of their questions. Just like method 1, you save time by skipping parts of the passage that are asked about. Furthermore, you get a head start in the questions by trying to answer them beforehand. There's other benefits. So at the end of a lot of my tutoring sessions, if I have time, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm talking right up until our last minute. But I'll ask students what they got the most, or where I ask like, what would they tell someone else? And almost everyone they don't say like, oh, so katoa. They don't say like semicolons. They say that reading strategy helped me cut out and help me think differently. And I asked one student to tell me more because he really seemed to be onto something. And he said this, he said, when I read it without going to the questions first, there's so many themes going on that sometimes they get clouded in my mind and I don't know what to pay attention to. But when I go to the questions first, I know exactly what to pay attention to. And I was like, yes, that's exactly it. And can I use your words? And he said I could use his words. So credit to him. But that helped him, because when you read something you don't want to read, it's hard to pay attention to it. Okay, so you kind of gamify this. All right, you kind of make that you're not here to learn about the transition from whatever ecology. You're not. You're here to get points, because you're here to get a high score to go to college. That's why you're here. You're not here to learn. You're not here to learn. In any reading section I ever do, I'm never going to sit there and discuss what did this passage mean to you, like an English class would do or a reading class would do. Okay, and that's weird. It just feels weird. Okay, I'm going to tell you how to get through the material. And this strategy works for standardized tests. Okay, just across the board. If you're in a class and there's questions about the reading, this will help you. It's not going to help you if in this what's like open-ended. Okay, so you just have to take this with a grain of salt. I am not an English teacher. This is not a reading class. This is an SAT class. And unfortunately, getting good at the SAT may not help you in other academic pursuits. But here we are. Okay, I want to say a few more things about the vocab. All right, here, actually, I'm going to send this link to you guys. The vocab. So I don't recommend studying vocab. Okay, I don't recommend studying vocab. The chances that you're going to get a new vocab word that you don't know, and it's going to be the one that shows up on the SAT, are pretty slim. Okay, and it might happen. It totally might happen. I mean, I had one student who, like, we went through some vocab once because, like, the class insisted, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know that last time I took the SAT." So I mean, it could happen. It really could. But I don't recommend it. I recommend every time you come across a new word, every single time you pause, take your academic break, pause your timer, and go look it up. When I took my son to Disneyland, we were riding the little I know it was either Dumbo or it was in Tomorrowland where the rockets go up. Okay, then he got to like pull on a throttle and it would go up and down. And he kept hearing the word descend, like the people who are running the ride, they're kind of, okay, as you descend, whatever. And he'd never heard that word. He was like 4 or 5. And he goes, "Mom, what does descend mean?" And I said, "It means going down." And he goes, "Oh, but like ascend." He knew what ascend was. It's like ascend, descend. And he goes, "Okay." So we get in there and he's going up and down, and then he tilts down. So we go down, he goes, "Descend." Okay, so what did he do? The moment he learned a new word, okay, he then applied it. So this is very powerful. Let's say you didn't know what mediation meant. Go look it up and then apply it. That is very, very, very powerful. You're going to, if you do this consistently on your SAT studies, you're going to improve your vocabulary. Okay, and the other thing I want to tell you about the vocabulary is a lot of times the word will be a metaphor. Okay, so let's say it's something like, after the announcement, applications to the program amped up. Okay, that's actually a metaphor. Amped has something to do with waves. It's the amplification of waves. Okay, well, amplification really just means like the expansion of something. No, maybe that isn't a metaphor. Let's do a different one. No, let's just stick with amplification. Okay, applications. Yes. Okay. There was an amplification of applications. I wouldn't write like that. That sounds funny. Okay, there's an amplification of applications. Okay. And let's say they're asking you, amplification most nearly means, and one of the options was rev up. Now, rev up means your car gets started. That could work. Like if I said applications revved up, you would know what I meant, but it's a metaphor. Okay. Applications are an engine that drives. It's the same thing. I mean, it's still expanding or starting or getting going, but it wouldn't be correct. So you would have to be very like not colorful at all in your language and choose the word increase. Okay, so that really helps a lot of times. So sometimes the question you're the vocab word you're gonna be dealing with might be a metaphor itself, or it might not be, but the answer won't. So that helps. Like you just rule out all the metaphors, and then maybe you're only stuck with 2 or 3 instead of 4. Okay, and then you're going to use the one that fits in context. Okay, so you're going to basically make the passage more boring. But that really, not every single question, but that does help a lot of time on the vocab. So that's how I would approach the vocab. Okay, you're probably not going to see a score increase by studying vocab, but you can use the SAT to improve your vocab, and I want you to treat it like a fill in the blank. Okay, again, you're going to have to practice this a few times before it pays off for you, but it is a very, very, very powerful strategy. Thanks.